just ticked over on the hour. I'm sure we'll see a couple more joining us slightly late, but let me start by saying good morning, good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening to those of you joining us today for this Impact Rankings Masterclass focusing on the MENA region. And thank you for joining us for this masterclass, and thank you to all of you who helped your universities to participate in this year's Impact Rankings. It is another record-breaking year for us at THE. We saw over 1,700 universities participate in one or more SDGs, and nearly 1,600 of those participating in the overall Impact Rankings. We know it is not a small undertaking to participate in these rankings. So to you and to your teams, thank you so much, because these rankings really wouldn't exist without you. Now, in a moment, I'm going to be handing over to my colleagues, Hannah Peacock, who is the Impact Rankings product owner in charge of the overall rankings, and to Mark Tweddle, one of our directors over on the consultancy team. And they're going to run us through some of the results, particularly looking at the MENA region, but more importantly, some of the data that sits beneath these rankings. Mark will then take us through some of the options and some of the solutions we have for you as a university who participates in the rankings to gain further help and insight. There's only one piece of housekeeping for me to do here, and that's to point out that there is a Q&A button right at the bottom of your screens. Please do use this as we go throughout the session. Put any questions, any thoughts that you have into that box. Please don't use the chat function, as the questions won't be picked up there. I will be back with you towards the end of this session for roughly 15 minutes of Q&A. But without any further ado, please let me hand over to Hannah Peacock, the Impact Rankings product owner here at THE. Hannah, over to you.
Thank you, Nick. I'm excited to start this session on a series of masterclasses. This morning we had our APAC session with Duncan Ross, and now we have our MENA one. I also wanted to highlight that these slides and the recording will be shared afterwards, so no worries there. And again, with the Q&A session, please do feel free to ask anything, because you do have me right here, right now. So I will be going through the impact rankings, what they are, why we created them, why we chose to showcase universities' progress towards sustainability as well. We just had the ranking release last Thursday on the 1st of June. So we'll also be going through a worldwide ranking analysis of the results, as well as a focused session on the MENA region, the Middle East and North Africa, to see those results and highlight some key points there. So I'll first start off by what we do at THE, especially when it comes to the rankings. We've always wanted to help universities, higher education institutions, either with students trying to find courses or universities to study in, for universities to better understand where they're at. And mostly the way we've done this is with data we collected, as we are more data focused. So we've had 3 missions here, and we've been able to show this with 3 of our rankings. So we have our main ranking, the World University Rankings, which focus on the mission of research. It's been around for a very long time, number of years, and it is our biggest ranking ever. There are minimum requirements there, but it is more research focused. We've also have our teaching mission, where we can see that reflected in other rankings, such as the Japan University Rankings. And then finally, we have our impact rankings, which is focused on sustainability, the mission of sustainability. So the impact rankings were created not very long ago, back in 2019. So it's only been 4 years, and we're on its 5th edition already with this new release. And yes, the mission is sustainability here, how we can measure universities' progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So the impact rankings, not just based on sustainability, they are more focused specifically on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So back in 2015, I believe the United Nations created these Sustainable Development Goals. There's a total of 17 of them to tackle multiple different areas and topics. And within that, they created 169 indicators and about 223 unique targets. So the aim here from the United Nations were, although it's more centered for governments and communities, the aim here was to bring more sustainability, partnership, equity, community-focused efforts towards a better future, a more sustainable future. And honestly, it's amazing work. If you are not too familiar with the SDGs, please do read about them. And then we follow up with why universities, and why do universities have a key role here in sustainability and the SDGs more specifically. Key point here, if you go anywhere around the world, any region, any country, you will find a university. Higher education institutions are found throughout everywhere. They tend to be a key statement in any country as well. It's estimated there's about 35,000 universities around the globe. And although they do focus on research, which is highly important as well, when it comes to innovation and development, there's also teaching with universities, teaching the future citizens of the world as well. We also see that universities have an economic status too. About 1.7% of the gross world product is in higher education institutions. So from here, universities do play a key role in addressing these Sustainable Development Goals. So let's measure the SDGs, how we reviewed the United Nations targets and the goals, and how we applied it to a way we can measure universities. So if we look at the SDGs, this one is, for example, on quality education, which is a highlight for all universities out there, although not just the only one. We have a series of targets and indicators that the UN has highlighted as being detrimental to a more sustainable future. So we've reviewed all these indicators very carefully and tried to apply it in a way that we can ask universities if they are doing this themselves. So within that, we created the theory of change, we like to call it, which is based off of 4 critical areas where we can apply those UN targets and in a way translate them into indicators where we can ask universities. So we have our research. We still believe that research is a key aspect here in reaching those Sustainable Development Goals. If a university publishes a paper on renewable energy, for example, this heavily relates to SDG 7, which is clean energy. Or if the university publishes a patent, for example, that relates to SDG 9, which is infrastructure and innovation. We then have stewardship, how universities interact with the resources that are entrusted with. So this could either be physical resources, such as the campus and the buildings, or it could be the people that work in and out of the university. We then have outreach, how universities are interacting with their communities. So this could either be global communities all around the world, or be something smaller, which is local communities, which is just as important. Here, if a university, for example, is collaborating with their local hospital in research or educational outreach, this is heavily related to SDG 3, which is good health and well-being. And then finally, we have teaching, how are universities applying sustainability aspects and teaching better things for the future leaders of tomorrow, or just the future society of tomorrow. So with all these 4 aspects in mind, we've been able to review those UN targets and ask universities specific questions on their sustainability so they can showcase that progress. So there's 3 aspects from that theory of change. There's 3 different types of data that we ask for in universities. We have our research data, which I'll go through now. We also have numeric data and evidence data, which I'll go through in a bit. So research data, we collect this data from our bibliometric partners at Elsevier. We review publications that are mapped specifically to the SDGs. So Elsevier have been working for years now on some AI and machine learning on mapping those publications that universities are doing, that research that they're doing, and mapping them to the SDGs with using keywords. So here we have this image from Elsevier. We can see the most publications and where they're mapped to. This is heavily overcast by SDG 3, which is good health and well-being, which doesn't surprise us too much because of medical research being quite heavy and clinical citations as well. But then we have SDG 7, which I always find interesting. It's still heavily, it's the second most published SDG papers relating. And it makes sense if universities are publishing towards renewable energy, clean energy, especially with the climate action and climate crisis that is currently happening. We can see that here. So we then ask about numeric data, just like in our other rankings. But what makes the impact ranking specifically different to all the other rankings out there, and it being the global, the only global ranking based on sustainability as well, is that we ask for evidence data. So again, as mentioned earlier, we've looked at each of the targets and the indicators from the UN, and we've applied that theory of change to create questions where we ask universities specific things and they provide us with evidence. So either public URLs or documents to give us proof that they are doing the actions in question. So if we have a look at this example from SDG 3, good health and well-being, we have here on the side on the right that the UN asked for universal access to sexual and reproductive care, if they promote mental health, if there's if they have a framework convention on tobacco control as well. So these don't fully apply to universities. So what we ask instead that could apply to universities is, do they offer free sexual health care and advice for their own university students? Do they offer free mental health support for students and staff, both of them? And do they have a non-smoking campus or in designated areas or the whole campus itself? So by doing this, we can more relate to the UN targets, to those indicators in a more equitable way. So from the evidence that you could provide, how do we calculate a score from there? Because with numeric data, you provide us the data and we get out a proportion from there, which is fairly straightforward. But with evidence, it being so new especially, how do we score it? So we ask the university a question with the statement. So for example, do you have a campus-free smoking, smoking-free campus? And the university can answer yes or no. And if they answer yes, they get that 1 point. And then if there's any additional details or things that we ask, you could also apply it there. You then would provide us with a piece of evidence that we review with our team. If the evidence is specific, that means that it's fully relevant and answers the question we're asking, we give it 1 point. If it, in a way, half answers the question or is not fully clear, but there is something there, we give it half a point for general, sorry. And if it's not relevant at all with the content that it's providing, it gets 0 points. After giving it a relevant score, so either a specific or a generic, we then review if the evidence is public. And we do want to highlight that public evidence is very strong evidence. If you're showing the world what you're doing, and it definitely gives it more credibility as well, we want to award this for institutions. So from here, in each indicator, there's a maximal possible points of 3. So we're now heading into our 5th edition. This has been our 5th edition. So the next edition would be a 6th, and we have seen that more universities are participating, but more universities are actually accomplishing these indicators and answering yes in their statements. So this is an amazing thing. Of course, we do want to see universities progress and do better. But when everyone answers yes to a question, or at least over 90% of universities answering yes to a question, we've reviewed this and made the question slightly more detailed in what we ask for. So those changes were applied to the 2022 methodology. We reviewed certain questions in SDG 3, SDG 4, 11, 16, and 17, where universities were giving good responses, and we've just added more options to let us know what more specific things they're doing regarding those questions. I just highlighted certain things within the question itself to give it more importance. So in quality education, for example, we now ask if the resources that are given to the general public, educational resources, if they're free, which we didn't ask before. We just asked about general educational resources for the public. Also, another thing to highlight about the changes to 2022 is we have significantly enhanced our evaluation and review process. So we've did do a massive change where in previous years we asked for 3 pieces of evidence, and this year we asked for 2 pieces of evidence. And this just means that we're able to focus more with the quality of the evaluation process. Because with less evidence to review, more quality we can give out. So this has heavily influenced it, and we do have a quality assurance team as well, which have been able to review all the evaluation scores when it comes to evidence. Another big change, actually, which wasn't really available in our methodology that we sent out last August, because we do provide the methodology before the data collection, is a change to the overall score. So we have changed this. We now use a 2-year average to calculate the overall score from the total score given. So the way we calculate the overall score, apologies, is we use SDG 17, Partnership for the Goals, because it is a key SDG that relates heavily and is linked to all other SDGs. So that one is still mandatory to be included in the overall ranking. And then we review 3 other SDGs, the best scoring SDGs you've submitted to. And that's about 26%, with SDG 17 being 22%. And from there, we calculate the overall score, the total score that it's given. We also do individual ranks, SDG ranks. So if you submit to just one SDG, for example, you will be ranked in that one SDG. So from there, in 2023, you've provided you've submitted to 4 SDGs, one of them being SDG 17. You will be in the overall ranking. So that still applies here, and we can see this here. So I would also like to highlight that bibliometrics will always represent the same proportion of the overall score, regardless of the SDGs chosen. But with each SDG, we do have different questions and metrics, and a little bit of different ways we proportion the scores out. So please do read our methodology if you want more information on that, because we do highlight it everywhere. But the bibliometrics still stay the same. And these are all scaled, so we can provide equal way of measuring those SDG scores. So here's the change to the overall score, which is shown here. If in 2022 you participated and you were ranked in the overall for 3 different types of SDGs, and then in 2023 you focused on other SDGs or improved in other SDGs, so those were the 3 top best scoring ones, we still apply the same rule here of getting an average of 2 years. So it doesn't matter which SDGs were used in the scoring, they still have the same equal amount of percentage in the total score. And we grab both if you participated in both years to do an average. If you participated just in 2023, the same rules apply that I mentioned earlier. We grab SDG 17 and the 3 best scoring SDGs that you submitted to, and that will be your overall score. And if you participated just in 2022, but not in 2023, then you just won't be in the 2023 ranking. So yes, if you do drop out of the ranking, you won't be ranked that year, which is fairly straightforward. So why have we made this change to the overall score, especially when we released our methodology last August? So when reviewing the data, we decided that the overall score of 2 years would smooth out the rate of change. So we have a lot more universities participating, a lot more data, and we wanted to reduce the volatility of participants because there's more universities participating, and it is shown. We have not done this for the individual SDGs, so that still applies the same way. We don't apply a 2-year average in the individual SDG ranks, but we do for the overall, because we do want to put more focus on the individual SDG performance. And I will be going through that slightly later on with the result analysis. But it is true that with the individual SDG performance, you can see certain regions or countries, well, continents rather, and where their priorities lie when it comes to the SDGs. So I'll now go through a world overview. So as mentioned earlier, last Thursday, the 1st of June, was when we released the ranking, the 2023 edition. Amazingly, we had 1705 universities participate this year, which has been an increase from last year's 1,525 universities, and this has been spread out over 115 countries. So here in this map, we can see which countries have participated in. We do see a bit more lacking in sub-Saharan Africa, but we're slowly working on that, and we hope to see more African universities participating. But we do have quite already a good spread out the world. Here we have the participation numbers across the 4 years that we've started the ranking. So we've seen this steadily increase each year in each continent, and it is amazing to see as well. We do see this more in the Asia region and in Europe as well, but we still get a good amount of universities participating in each year. I'll now go through the top 100 in the overall for the 2023 results. This is predominantly with Europe, with 35 universities being represented here, and then followed up by North America and Oceania as well, with 23 and 22 respectively. But I think it's also important here to highlight that we do have 1 university in the top 100 from the Middle East region, and 2 from South Africa, 2 from Africa and 2 from South America. So we do see more spread out compared to other years when it comes to the top 100. And here are some logos from universities, which top universities in countries have been at the top. So we have Queen's University from Canada reaching high there, along with Simon Fraser University. We have our UK ones as well, Manchester University, University of Manchester, apologies, because there is a difference. We have a few German universities there too that scored highly in SDG 9. The University of Johannesburg in South Africa is a good mention as well. University of Saints Malaysia and University of Technology Malaysia. So we have representation over there. And then we have our Australian universities, Western Sydney University, which came first place the 2nd year in the row, along with others. So I'll now go through the ranking analysis for the Middle East and North Africa. So here we can see the participation across the MENA region. We have had a lot of universities from Egypt, for example, also Saudi Arabia, Iran, but also in North Africa as well, with Morocco and Algeria. So here we have a different representation on how the participation was this year. So this is spread out across each SDG, and it is a very good indication to see where the priorities lie with different regions. So to explain this graph, it is the MENA participation versus worldwide. So the middle line there is at 0%, and we're looking at the average on the worldwide versus the MENA participation. So to look more on the negative side first, not really negative, but we see less participations from MENA universities in SDG 9, which is innovation and infrastructure, or SDG 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. So this doesn't mean it's not a priority for MENA universities. It just means they participate in less than other regions in the world or worldwide. So we do see this is there's more participants versus worldwide in Europe for these two SDGs, which is completely fine. It just gives us a bit more insight in where the priorities lie. So we can see that most universities from the MENA region participate in SDG 4, which is quality education, SDG 3, which is good health and well-being, but those two are the most participated SDGs in the whole world anyway. So I would rather focus on SDG 1, which is no poverty, which is quite high there, and SDG 6, which is clean water and sanitation, because those two are still quite high. I also wanted to go through the Africa participation and the Arab participation as well. So we've seen 160 universities here from the whole Africa continent, and we can see here SDG 9 is also not too big of a priority when it comes to participation, but SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, and SDG 1 are still highlighted here for the whole Africa continent, which does give us quite more insight. And when it comes to the Arab participation specifically, we see the same thing for SDG 9 and SDG 11. It is on the lower side, but SDG 4, quality education, SDG 1 and SDG 3 is still higher up. So here is a little bit of a different summary from those three graphs comparing the three. So we see the percentage of universities from each region or continent that participated in each SDG. So with these numbers, we get really the same thing. So we can see that in the Africa region for SDG 4, it's at 80%, but for Arab and the Middle East and North Africa, it's 87%. So we do see that difference there. When it comes to SDG 10 as well, reduced inequalities, we see a difference there with Africa and Arab. And this is also highly interesting when it comes to see those priorities. Now I'll highlight which institutions from the Middle East and North Africa are in the top 200 in the overall ranking for the latest Impact 2023 results. So these are in alphabetical order, not necessarily ranked position. This is alphabetical order, but we see different universities here. We have one Aliyah University from Bahrain. We have Aliyah Ayman University from Jordan, Al Ain University from the United Arab Emirates, Aswan University from Egypt as well, reaching that 200 spot. And then we have 3 universities from Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, King Faisal University, and Prince Mohammed bin Fahd University. So we have a look at their score from last year, their ranking position from last year. We can see that most have either retained or improved their rank from last year as well. So we do see good results here. I'll now go through a series of examples of data, the results that we've gotten, a bit more specific. I have chosen SDG 6 here, clean water and sanitation. just because we do have a representation in the top 10, which you will see in a minute, from a university in the Middle East and North Africa. So in SDG 6, similar to all, well, not similar, it's the same with all of our SDGs. We have our research metric. Then all our SDGs, we do ask about that research aspect that is mapped to that SDG. But then we have a series of other metrics that do differ from each SDG. So we ask for water consumption per person, how much water is being used at the university, and is it used consciously? Water usage and care as well, so that relates to that, but that is more evidence-based. Water reuse, are universities reusing their water where they can? And then finally, water in the community. Are they providing educational outreach or promoting conscious water use in their local community, not just at their university, because the outreach is important here as well. So here are the top 20 universities in the latest, again, 2023 results. We can see this spread out quite well wide. Main representation here is from Oceania with 6 universities, and North America with 5 universities. But we do see 2 universities there from the Middle East and 1 from Africa. So these are the top 10 in SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. So I won't go through them all, but I wanted to highlight, although it's not from the MENA region, we do have the University of Cape Town from South Africa, which were a new participant this year and came in 9th place. We then have Alayo Aman University from Jordan, which came in 6th place, and our King Abdullah University of Science and Technology coming in 5th place from Saudi Arabia. So we have a good representation here in the top 10 from the Middle East and North Africa region. I'll then go through quality education, SDG 4, because this is the most participated SDG that we see around the MENA region. So as highlighted earlier, we have our research metric, our universities dedicating publications and research towards that SDG. We look at the percentage of graduates with teaching qualifications. So we do see some difference here, which I will highlight in a bit, with universities from slightly less developed countries, or a difference between Europe and Africa here with the percentage of graduates with teaching qualifications to teach them at a primary level. And we do see this because universities want to give more to education, to early learning, which is the UN target here. So they do make it easier for recent graduates from universities to have those teaching qualifications to teach at primary school level. We have lifelong learning measures, so the second part of quality education, where we ask universities about their outreach towards the local community, the general public, and if they're providing that continued education to them. And then we have our percentage of first generation students. So how many universities are going to university for the first time out of their immediate family, because this is important as well to highlight. So here we have the top 20 universities, which are spread out, mostly being from Europe, which we can see here, but I do want to highlight there is a university in the top 20 from Africa and another one from South America, along with 4 from the Middle East. So we'll have a look at these. So I wanted to highlight Al Ain University here from the UAE. They came in 6th place, which is quite impressive. We also have the top place, which is Kwame, apologies for the pronunciation here, Kwame from University of Science and Technology from Ghana. They came 1st place this year as well. So they're getting representation in the Africa region too, which I think is important to highlight here. We do see quite a lot of different countries here. So in some of our SDGs, they will be predominantly from Canadian, UK, Australian universities, for example. but depending on the SDG, we still see that variety and representation worldwide, which I think is amazing to see in the SDGs, the impact rankings themselves, because we do see it's a global effort towards the goals. If we have a look at those two metrics that I mentioned earlier, the proportion of graduates with teaching qualifications, I've taken these box plots out from our data points product, the impact dashboard, which I'll go through in a bit. We have a comparison here from Africa to Europe when it comes to this indicator. So what we can see here is that the proportion of graduates with teaching qualifications, the median is slightly above 40 points here. So that means in the region, Africa region, more universities are scoring higher here than they are in Europe, which is around, I don't think it reaches 30 points there for their median, which is the line there in the middle. So this is, again, a good representation of how slightly less developed countries are focusing more on providing those teaching qualifications for their graduates so they can teach at a primary school level to continue on with that early learning aspect. I'll then go through the proportion of first generation students, again, Africa versus Europe. Here we do see a difference as well. So we don't see many, we see slightly less, apologies, in the median being in Africa. So a bit more, about 22%, I'm going to guess there is the median in the Africa continent, but for Europe it is higher. So this could either be because Europe might be slightly better at reporting the data if Africa is not available, but we do see a push from Europe as well in the continued education aspect. So final thoughts, I'll wrap this up. What should we be doing, not really just at THE, but universities, governments, corporations, societies, everyone? We need to ensure our higher education institutions are delivering on sustainability. So as I mentioned earlier, universities are critical here. They are key points in delivering the SDGs, and that needs to be known. Universities need to report their progress on the SDGs as well. So it doesn't matter if you don't participate in the impact rankings, although we would love that. Universities do have a key role here, and they should be showing their progress because they are doing it if they look deep in. They should involve young people and excluded groups, such as the refugees. We've worked with the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees to have them more involved within the impact ranking so they get more representation, or we can make it more aware for universities and how they're doing this. Universities should also work intersectionally across communities and the SDGs, so creating partnership relating to SDG 17, partnership for the goals, doing a collaborative work there, and realizing the amazing asset of higher education for the good of society, because Agenda 2030 is slowly approaching. So it is quite important to do the best that we can. So after going through the impact ranking analysis results there, I also wanted to highlight our SDG impact ranking dashboard. So I did get some of those box plots and the squares here as well from our product. Here we just have an analysis, or a better way of showing the impact ranking results, where you can see your overall score, your overall rank, the median across the world, or you can choose the specific regions that you want to review, the continents such as Africa or Europe, to get a better comparison on your ranking results. So if you do want more information towards that product, do contact data@timeshighereducation.com, and my colleagues will be able to provide more information on that. But when it comes to the impact rankings themselves, if you do have any specific questions that you might not be able to ask today, please do feel free to contact us at impact@timeshighereducation.com. In participation to the ranking is completely free. We have a very extensive methodology of over 190 pages, but we do translate this in different languages, including Arabic, which is available online. And we're slowly working towards the 2024 methodology as well, which isn't expected to have any major changes. I will now pass on to Mark Tweedle to continue the presentation for the consultancy side.
Great. Thank you, Hannah, and good morning and good afternoon to everybody joining today's session. I just wanted to take a few minutes before we open up to questions and answers to talk a little bit about the consultancy offering that we have at Times Higher Education. My name is Mark. I'm one of the directors of the consultancy division. The consultancy team at THE is comprised of teams based both in the UK and Singapore. I myself am based in the London office. And for a lot of the work that we do with universities, governments and other interested parties, we utilize the wealth of data that THE compiles from our various rankings, but we also supplement that with data from primary research. Now, over the breadth of our offering, by integrating, for example, the skills and expertise of the Knowledge Partnership, that's an agency specialized in courses and market reviews. Alongside that, we've swelled our team through integrating the research arm of the World 100 Network, which is a network of reputation and communications managers at some of the world's leading universities. Within that team, there is great experience of conducting, for example, reputation and brand audits of universities. Now, as you can see from the boxes on screen, there are other types of consultancies we offer, such as transnational education, partnership development, consultancies related to research strategies. However, today I wanted to briefly cover the range of consultancy services we have related to the impact rankings specifically. So in terms of what we offer in that space, for universities who are already ranked in our impact rankings, we are able to provide an assessment of your data submitted by individual SDGs, along with potential recommendations for improvement, so understanding the quality of evidence you submitted and how you might better be able to evidence that in future years. For universities who are not yet ranked and would like to be considered for entry in the ranking in future, we do offer a service where we can simulate your performance in the rankings based on evidence that you submit to us in a confidential setting. That simulation will be based on historic data, but will help familiarize you with the process of providing your data and also understanding how we will assess that at THE. And thirdly, on the bottom of the screen, this year, based on requests by universities, we have launched a new product, the SDG Academy. This is a training workshop for universities, both who are ranked or unranked, who would like for THE to train their staff on how to use the impact rankings to measure progress against the SDGs. And I have more details on that in my following slides. So, what is the SDG Academy? It is a bespoke interactive training workshop designed for institutions to build expertise and enhance their capability within the university in using the UN SDGs and the impact rankings to showcase their impact on society and demonstrate that stewardship of resources and outreach within local communities. We've often been asked by universities whether we are able to conduct such training for staff who are either involved in SDG strategy, perhaps involved in data collection, measurement, or communications. And we often bring, one of the ideas of this SDG Academy is to bring those various departments and faculties across the university who are involved in that process, bring them together to help get buy-in from those various teams and raise awareness, raise skills, raise knowledge across those teams as it relates to the SDGs. So as you can see, there are different types of attendees who we would suggest attend these workshops. They will be conducted by the THE consultancy team who have expertise in data collection, analysis, research, reputation and branding. And though this can vary from product to product, the delivery mode, we would expect it to be a 3-hour virtual workshop. Just to give you a bit more detail about what that workshop and the training could include, this slide gives an overview of that. But as you can see from these various elements, it is customizable depending on needs. So in terms of the SDG audit, before the training workshop, what we would do is conduct an SDG audit of your institution via a survey to check your staff's views of your institution's SDG strategy and implementation. This will allow us to perform a gap analysis, identifying where there might be particular views or perceptions about which SDGs your university is most active in or strongest in, whereas that might not correlate with the data. We will then share the results of that survey to you during the workshop. And often that survey is an activity that would engage the staff, and the results can bring awareness to the cross-functional teams within the institution around the work being undertaken by universities towards the SDG goals. We would have a final call with you in advance of the workshop as well to understand your needs and customize the workshop accordingly. And depending on where the institution is at, some suggested topics we can cover during the workshop could include, for example, how to formulate a sustainability action plan or how to measure SDG outcomes. As you can see from the second list of bullet points, there are various aspects that we could cover in the workshop. Now, in my next few slides, I just wanted to bring some of what I've just said to life a little bit. I wanted to provide you with some of the sample questions that we can ask in our survey. This question we see on screen, for example, was asked to staff and faculty on the levels of agreement that their university firstly provides students with the skills to address some of the SDGs. The overall level of agreement among staff was at 77% for that statement. Secondly, we asked what levels of agreement do they have that the university implements at least some of the SDGs through governance and operational policies. Thirdly, related to whether the university strengthens public engagement and participation in addressing at least some of the SDGs. And fourthly, whether the university utilizes its research capabilities to achieve some of the SDGs. And we can see from the results of this question, there was very high levels of agreement that the university is utilizing its research capabilities to contribute and address at least some of the SDGs. But the lowest level of agreement was related to whether they're providing students with the knowledge and skills. And this allows us to identify where there are potential gaps that the university might want to address. Just to give another example, we can also ask your staff and faculty about what the extent that what is the extent that sustainability is a strategic priority for your university. In this example, we can see that whilst most of the staff shown in the blue bar gave a rating of 5 and above, that sustainability is a priority, there are nevertheless 37% of staff at this university giving a relatively low rating. So perhaps this university will need to think about their internal communications and how they communicate what they're doing related to sustainability to their wider staff. Just a couple more slides, one more example question. We often ask universities, the staff at universities, to pick up to 4 SDGs that are the highest priority for their university. And some universities may be surprised to find that whilst their university's priorities are SDG 1, 2, 3, or 4, their staff may feel otherwise and pick different SDGs. We see a different suite of selection here for this sample university. Most of them saying SDG 4, quality education, is relevant, perhaps unsurprising, and then varying levels across the other SDGs, high levels of recognition for SDG 3, good health and well-being, for example. And that can be particularly interesting because when we compare the perceptions of what a university's SDG priorities are or should be, there can sometimes be disconnect between the staff's views and what the research data tells us. So here we have an example where we conducted the survey the 4 SDGs on the left-hand side were the priorities picked by staff, SDG 1, 4, 5, and 13. But when we dig into the bibliometric data to understand in which SDGs is the university most active in, where are they producing their most highly cited research, SDGs 11, 7, 14, and 2 were best performing. And so this might have a number of implications, not least if a university wanted to divert their resources in which SDGs they submit to for the impact rankings. They might want to consider focusing on some of those strong research area SDGs. So that was just a brief overview of the SDG Academy. Please do, if this is of interest, reach out to THE's regional directors. We have Nick Davis on today's call, of course, and happy to take any questions that our audience may have related to this. So at that point, I just wanted to thank everybody for your attention, and I will hand over to Nick.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you, Hannah, for that fascinating deep dive into this year's impact rankings. Unsurprisingly, we have lots of questions, so we're going to try and rattle through as many as we can. For those of you who can, please do stay on. We'll try and run a little bit over to get through these. If we don't manage to answer all of them, we will, of course, come back over email to respond to any questions we can get around to answering. So, Hannah, first up, and this is a two-part question from an anonymous attendee. Does the quantity of evidence influence the evaluator's rating? Can you provide an example? In other words, if a university submitted 15 publications related to SDG 3 and another submitted 30 publications, would they score differently?
I first want to highlight the difference here between research, publications, and evidence. So research, we collect this data from our bibliometric partners at Elsevier. That's not something that universities need to provide at all. But then when it comes to evidence, we ask maximum 2 pieces of evidence per question indicator. So we only accept those 2 pieces of evidence. You're not really supposed to provide a huge list of different links. We will only review 2 per piece to give a fair advantage across all universities. So the quantity itself will not influence the evaluator's rating, the scoring decision. What we look at is the relevancy of the content itself within the evidence. We also review, if we see that the first piece of evidence gets maximum score, we don't necessarily review the second piece. This is because we want to give the best score possible using just the one piece of evidence that best represents the question at hand.
Thank you, Hannah. Next question, and I'll ask you both to comment on this. Would you please provide details on the marks awarded for each point to improve our results in future, as what we believe is a relevant piece of evidence seems sometimes not to be relevant by the Times review team?
So I'll go with that first. So we receive loads of different pieces of evidence, of course, about 250,000 from universities. But either way, we still have our specific guidelines within THE for the scoring evaluation. And these don't necessarily change unless the indicators are changing themselves. So, which have slowly been improving over the past 5 editions. So what we look at is the content itself, the relevancy. So is it answering the question in a clear manner? So again, the quantity is not necessary here, it's the quality. So if we ask, for example, the no smoking campus, we ask about policy on that, we would need to see that specific policy. So rules that are implemented at the university that are official, to give it the maximum score, and that of course it relates to no smoking. But if we were to see a campaign on university encouraging people not to smoke, that isn't what we're asking. Although it is incredible that they're doing that work, it's not what we're asking, so that would be considered not relevant. So my advice here would be to to review the question carefully, because we have chosen our words carefully, and make sure it ticks all that we ask for in the evidence itself.
And if I maybe just add to that, I guess the only piece I would add is utilising the comments box. So when a university submits their evidence to us, there is the opportunity alongside that to provide context to that evidence. And I would strongly recommend that universities do that. It will help the reviewer understand why you have submitted that evidence, particularly if it is a long document. You can use that comments box to highlight, for example, on what page they will find the relevant passage of text. That will help the reviewer or reduce the possibilities for misunderstanding your evidence.
Thank you both. Next question from Merabtine, perhaps Tarek from Sharjah. How do you verify that an evidence is genuine and not a report for reporting's sake?
So when it comes to evidence, we do receive loads of different types. For example, we do allow third-party websites like news articles and things like that. We do have our own guidelines, again, in our validation process to make sure the evidence is genuine. Sometimes you can tell if something was created for specifically the impact rankings. What we want to see and what we apply in the scoring is if the action is being taken place by the university as a body, if it is true as well, proper proof and not just a statement. We do keep that in mind. So just statements wouldn't be enough to show proof. We would need to see it. So we do take this into account as well when evaluating the evidence. We have our ways to review that to make sure it's genuine.
The next two questions we might bring together, in fact. So the first question from Caesar, and I know a difficult one to answer and one that perhaps many are thinking about. How can you combine 2 year scores after detailing the huge changes in methodology? Can you clarify? And the second part to this coming from Amanda Fort, asking, are the overall scores comparable if universities are submitting to different SDGs? So perhaps these two aspects of the overall rankings that I know we spoke about a lot last week, but Hannah, could you perhaps give us a summary of our thoughts there?
Yeah, of course. So in the slides, I went through the changes in the methodology for 2022, and I did highlight that many SDGs, specific indicators we have changed. However, the scoring itself has not changed. So they still have the same percentage, the same weight in the ranking. So the way we calculate the scores and the weight of the scores has not changed at all. We've just been a bit more specific in what we ask for, but mostly when it comes to options that universities can select, not the question itself. So keeping that in mind, there's not a big difference here when it comes to comparing those changes year on year for the SDGs. Yeah, so that's the answer to the first question.
And the second relating to, is it fair, I suppose, or is it comparable to benchmark in the overall rankings against other universities if they have submitted to different SDGs?
Okay, so this isn't really applying the 2 year average here. This is the general overall score. So this has been the same across the few years that we've been releasing the ranking. We created the overall with SDG 17, of course, being the main mandatory SDG there, to have a specific ranking to highlight all universities and their progress and see where their priorities or where they best scoring their SDGs. So it does vary per university, but also per year. So universities can excel 1 year in a few SDGs and then slightly improve in others, and those are the ones that get chosen to be in the overall score. So the overall score, applying the same percentage in weight, that's how we've been able to compare it to other universities and create the ranking. But we should still remember that there's individual SDG rankings, and those need to be shown off as well, because there's amazing work being done there as well.
Thank you, Hannah. And to be clear, because I think this was a point of contention last week and one that we spoke about quite a lot, it wasn't an easy decision to use this blended 2 year methodology or slight change that we've made for the overall rankings. But it has helped us to look at what the future of the overall rankings will be. And Duncan Ross, I know, was on stage talking about what 3 hypotheticals could be for the overall rankings, or whether in fact an overall rankings would be part of the impact rankings going forward. But rest assured that we will be coming out to you, our communities, our participating universities, to look at what those changes might be and make sure that we have your buy-in moving forward. Another question from Mariting. What does water consumption by campus population, i.e. worldwide median of 8, mean? What is the unit, the number 8?
So for the metric water consumption by campus population, we asked for 2 indicators here. So we asked for the total campus population. So how many students are attending the university, how many academic staff and normal employees, or even, well, not so much visitors, that can be excluded. But we then also asked the total volume of water in cubic meters that is being used by the university in a certain academic year. So last year was 2021, the academic year that we asked for. And from those 2 key points, we've created the proportion, so how much water consumption by the campus population. And the worldwide median there is 8, together with those 2, with that proportion, not the volume of water used.
Thank you, Hannah. Now, we have hit time there, but as I said, we will carry on. If any of you do have to leave, remember, we will be sending a full recording round afterwards, so you won't miss out, but we do have a number of questions to get through here. A very simple one from Merlin: is the SDG dashboard part of data points? And I can answer this one, absolutely. So data points is THE's overall data solution, cloud-based data solution, and the SDG dashboard is just one dashboard within that. We also have, of course, the World University Rankings dashboard, the Reputation dashboard, and one that would be probably interesting to this group, our newest creation, the Arab Universities dashboard, this looking into the very new Arab University rankings. So if you are interested in seeing a demonstration of any of these tools, please do reach out. Hannah, perhaps a more conceptual one here, as it will change from SDG to SDG, but how do you calculate teaching and outreach? Is it based on the survey only, or are there data or external sources?
So this would, again, change based on SDG, but what we've done is use both the teaching aspect, outreach aspect, to a stewardship and research to form all the indicators and metrics that we asked for across the SDGs. So this could be different if we ask for the outreach aspect in SDG 3. For example, we have a question on how universities promoting good health and well-being through outreach activities with the local communities. So that would be the perfect example there. Or in SDG 4, are universities providing educational outreach programs, so seminars, talks to the general public, the local general public. So that would be a good example of outreach. So having those 4 aspects, we've applied that across all the SDGs and all the indicators.
Lovely, thank you. Now, I think we answered this earlier. Nassim Ali asked, THE asked for statistics and other proofs to calculate university performance. This can vary quite a lot. What mechanisms do THE use to assign rankings for particular SDGs after taking into account supporting documents and materials? I think that's been answered in terms of how our assessors look at the quality of evidence against the questions asked. Is there anything else you'd like to add there, Hannah?
That's when it comes to the evidence data. When it comes to the quantitative data, so the numeric data that we asked for, I've gone through the other example, but we ask for the total campus population and then the volume of water used in a certain academic year. So we calculate that proportion, but we also apply, we normalize the data. So it is influenced by other data that universities are providing. So if we see the top university having low water use consumption for campus population, that would be the top of the scale. And then we have the lowest at the scale, and yeah, we just scale it out based on the university's data. So there's a lot of different aspects here that are involved in the production of the ranking. Yeah, and that's what it is for the quantitative data, because I think I've seen this question below as well.
One that was in fact answered, thank you very much, Mark, for answering it whilst we were going through the presentation, but perhaps one to call out here from Sam Thorpe, asking about, saying that last week we referenced 1,591 universities within the ranking, and this year, or this week even, we're talking about 1,705. Hannah, can we just get a clarifying answer there between those two numbers?
So in the whole ranking itself, we've seen 7,705 participants. So universities submitting data to the ranking across 115 countries. So that is across the whole SDGs. Not all universities are in the overall ranking, which is where the other figures from, I believe, because that is that minimum requirement of participating in SDG 17 and 3 other SDGs. So we do have a lot of cases of universities submitting to just one SDG to either see where they would rank in that SDG or to dip their feet in a little bit if it's their first year. And that's why the numbers are slightly different.
Thank you very much. And thank you to this person. It seems that they attended last week's GSDC at KAUST. But they ask, how does the survey, which was released at the Global Sustainable Development Congress, support the findings for THE's rankings or feed into the impact rankings? Is that something that you were working on at all, Hannah?
So I think we still are collecting that data from the events team, if it's the right survey that I'm thinking of. But yeah, at the conference, we gathered a lot of input from universities, which is something that we absolutely love doing as well, hearing everyone's input, but also something that we apply specifically on the impact rankings. So we do listen to universities, we do listen to any feedback that is given. We have our own advisory board as well. So everyone's input is used in our methodology reviews, for example. So we'll probably be utilizing that as well.
Another question here, the research range you mentioned for SDG 3 was listed as 2016 to 2020, whilst in your methodology it lists the research range from 2017 to 21.
So we do look at publication period of 5 years, and it was 2017 to 2021 for the latest impact rankings. We've used that photo, that image in our slides because we did not have an updated version, so apologies for that, but it's still useful to know what publications are mapped to what SDGs.
Are the data results provided in THE data points dashboard considered as unscaled, whilst the data results on your official website are considered scaled?
I believe so. So I think the ones on our website are scaled when it comes to the overall ranking, not the individual SDG rankings. And then on data points, it is there as well. But if you do have any questions about the scaling, please feel free to reach out to us and we can explain it in more depth. But it could be seen slightly different, but the score is still the same.
Yeah. So do remember, when we bring together the overall rankings, of course, we use those stretch scores to ensure that we are trying to compare universities fairly within the overall rankings. But the data you'll be seeing within THE data points will be for the individual SDGs, so not using stretch scores at all. The one change you might also see this year would be, of course, because we're using the blended 2-year ranking, which you'll see on our website. But again, the data you're seeing within the SDG dashboard relates only to this year's performance. But as Hannah says, if you have any questions about that, please do reach out to your regional director or to the Data Point support team, and they'd be more than happy to provide any additional information. We're going to do 2 more questions because we are now 10 minutes over time. So let's go for Mark, perhaps one here for you. Is it best practice to run a simulation every year with THE? Should it be done a specific amount of time before the rankings are released to implement best practices?
Thank you for that question. I think the simulations are particularly useful for a university who has not yet entered the ranking. So it is probably something that would not be run every year, but as a first initial step. Typically, when we have run these simulations with the universities, it has been around about this time, the summer months. So usually the impact release sparks interest and a university considers applying and submitting data to the ranking. Conducting that exercise, now in the months of June, July, August, allows time for the university to learn from that process of submitting data for the simulation in order to then submit their full data in September through to November, as I suspect the submission window will be this year.
And a cheeky way to squeeze in 2 extra questions here related to that. Have you found that the SDG audit correlates to universities' actual performance improvement within the rankings? And another one on the consultancy, is it free or not?
Okay, unfortunately not free. That would be a charged service. Nick would be the best point of contact to talk about the potential fees involved for the consultancy work. But regards the SDG audit linked within the SDG Academy, that is a new product offering. We have run that with just a few, a small number of universities in recent months. So we haven't seen that correlation between the participation in that and performance in actual rankings. But our wider work with universities, I think we have provided benefit, particularly when it relates to, for example, that disjoint between what a university might consider to be their strongest SDGs and what the actual, for example, research data shows. And indeed, when we run simulations for universities, that can be quite enlightening. A university expecting to perform best in a particular SDG might actually find they perform better in other lesser considered SDGs across their institution. So those are, some of our example engagements.
A final question here from Larissa Antoniuk. Apologies for the pronunciation there. Do you have plans for making public cases of universities who got the highest place in any individual year? I.e., do we have a thought process around sharing best practice of these universities who have performed so well? Hannah, I don't know if that's anything that you and the data team are thinking about.
Yes, so for those of you that may have attended the event last week, we did some SDG pre-launches and did highlight some best practices from universities that scored high, or not even necessarily from universities that are in the top ranking, just great evidence that we've seen that really do answer the questions we're asking. So we do this, but as a separate masterclass in September around that time. I can't confirm the exact timeline now, but we do have those sessions to help universities out with their impact submission because it is a big task and we know that. So we do offer those best practices and highlight them, but just later on in the year.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Look, there are dozens more great questions here. How do we link SDGs to institutional strategy? How do we pick best pieces of evidence? We would love to answer them all, but we can't take up your entire day. So we will endeavour to answer all of those questions we didn't get to over email. And of course, we will be sharing the presentation and the recording after this session as well. So look, thank you very, very much for joining us today. Thank you for your questions and your engagement. And on behalf of myself, Anna, Mark, and the whole THE team, thank you once again for participating and helping with these impact rankings.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.